This video you're about to watch is a bunch of clips thrown together from a live stream that we did a couple of days ago debunking PragerU on systemic racism. With that being said, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe, and let's go ahead and get right into the video.
Students in many New York City government schools are separated by color during the school year. State governments put regulations in place that make it harder for minorities to start businesses.
So firstly, what regulations? That's first and foremost. But even so, even if she could outline the regulations, to me, in my eyes, and I think this is the only way to show and demonstrate systemic racism, she has to show that these regulations or law are directly targeting these minorities. If it's just random regulations and it just so happens that minorities are being affected at a disproportionate rate in comparison to like white people, then to me that's not systemic racism. That's just a racial disparity, and that's not how you substantiate systemic racism. And I think that could be a whole nother conversation.
She also seems to think her enemies or the people she's kind of going against here are framing it as, because it's clear from the beginning of the video she's on some type of thing where it's like, you know, everybody says this thing exists and she's doing this thing. It really does exist, but not how you think.
Not how you think it does.
Not how you think it does. So, you know, I really want to know what's being missed. And, you know, some people would maybe see this as something that's going towards something similar to our view or whatever. So,
and the clearest distinction that I made a year ago, right, is that we're talking about is a standard for being racist your own personal values in which you choose, right? Or is it the standard of how you're being racist, the law? So again, an example, if a cop just pulls over a black guy because he's black, well, and then there's no law that's forcing him to do that, then that's his own choice. He's an agent of the system. He is not the system itself. He's an agent operating with it. That cop should be fired. But now if it's like the law says, pull over your black people because they're black, then that's systemic racism. Even if he's not racist, I don't want to do it, but I have to, then that's systemic racism.
And when we say force, I don't want that to be too like, oh, the cop wasn't forced to do it, but like, I want people to realize that it is an important distinction to say that this cop did something that was in his station's operating standards or the policing standards that we currently have to do it. Which is to say, it's way different when a cop does something racist and the system says you're good. That was, you know, that's how we do things around here, Billy Bob. Versus, you know, we have a whole massive system that's focused on rooting out racism, in some ways completely irrationally, right? In some ways they violate rights in the name of rooting out racism, right? And that cop decides to do something that's literally against all that. If he's being racist, he's going against everything this system is about then. How is it systemic if what he's doing, the system explicitly says, like, this is not what you're supposed to be doing?
In Oakland, no student is allowed to get a D or an F. Instead, everyone is simply promoted to the next grade whether they know the material or
right
not.
There. That's interesting. That's interesting how she couldn't even maintain her own thing. She goes, everyone. I thought this was about systemic racism, Amala, but everyone gets this pass. She says minority students and all these points about schooling. If this is affecting everyone, and I'm even skeptical of it just affecting minority students. Like, maybe it hits them harder for other reasons. That does not mean that whatever she's talking about isn't targeting just students as such.
Right.
You get what I mean? Like,
yeah, she's still playing off of the premise that, well, since the people who are receiving these grade privileges, the majority of them are black people and minorities, therefore it's systemic racism. I think she's still playing off that premise.
Which sounds a lot like the people who she's against. And this is why, here's another point I'll hit before you continue it, which is why I want people to start looking out for the very enabler-like things she's saying. Because she wants to distance her alleged tribe, her alleged side of this, from being the ones who are doing this. But as an enabler, does she disagree with the public school system? Does she disagree with just what's being taught in there? Which then begs the question, oh, do you just want to impose your own type of education regulation? Do you actually want to get rid of regulated education as such? If not, you are an enabler. if you're not against public school as such, in this case, based on the arguments she's making, she's just an enabler.
Yeah,
She doesn't actually disagree with her alleged enemies.
because the
Just
source.
two parts of the same side who disagree on application.
But yeah, but the main point to emphasize right here is that Amla said this applies to everyone. This is no targeting of minorities whatsoever.
City councils demonize their own police departments, then vote to cut police budgets. Crime and murder skyrocket. The victims are almost all minorities.
I mean, again, I mean, this is the same premise of the leftists.
This is so interesting. How could she ever deny any argument that starts with, especially the systemic racism about the medical care industry? Because it follows the same thing. You guys are Republicans, rightists want to cut Medicare for all. That affects the Medicare for all benefits of mostly minorities. Therefore, that is a racist thing you guys want to do.
I mean, this is the same exact principle, just applied to a different scenario. I mean,
yeah.
This is why, I mean, Amala is literally being an inverted mirror of the leftist, and those who just say this is systemic racism. They're like, no, that's not systemic racism. We disagree with that. This is systemic racism. But it's like you're using the same principle and just taking it two different directions and then fighting about it when you guys actually agree.